and welcome to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. I'm back. My name's Richard Cohen, and I'm joined today by Cindy Brunson, and we're going to talk about last night's games and everything else going on in the WNBA around the league at the moment. Cindy, is there anything you would like to get us started off with?
I would like to say, first of all, listening to your accent is one of my favorite things on Her Hoop Stats podcast. I am a longtime reader of yours, and it's so great to finally get to see you in person and chop it up. I'm really looking forward to this. Are you sensing any big trades on the horizon now that we are a week away from the WNBA trade deadline before we dive into those games?
I have not heard an awful lot about whispers or anything like that that's going on. It's obviously a very strange situation we're in this season, with every player around the league becoming a free agent at the end of the year, pretty much, which makes it different in terms of the trade market. There are a lot of teams that could be more willing to part with players. Maybe there aren't enough teams that would be willing to admit that they ought to be sellers rather than buyers in the next week. I think there are probably at least 10 teams that think they're playoff teams.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced that means you should be a buyer rather than a seller. You should still, if you're going to be finishing 8th and getting knocked out in 2 games by Minnesota or New York, then should you really be worrying about your playoff position rather than your future? I think teams like Golden State should be looking for picks and for future talent if they can get it, if there are people out there that want it. But yeah, I'm not sure we're going to see as much as I was hoping for in the next week, but there are definitely teams out there, they're looking and talking, but we'll see what happens.
And just a reminder to the fans, the money has to work, right? You have to, that hard salary cap is in play here at the trade deadline.
Absolutely. Apart from Las Vegas, who are in a weird situation, but have probably already made their major move with Melissa Smith, because a couple of their players don't count on the cap because they were pregnancy replacements for Parker Tyus. But everyone else, both sides have to finish a trade under the salary cap. There is no leeway on that. When the contracts move from one team to the other, both sides have to be legal at the end of it.
And maybe that will be something addressed in the new CBA that's currently being negotiated. I got my Pay Us What You Owe Us shirt. Thank you, Breaking Tea, for quickly filling my order. Of course, I saw these shirts for the first time in person at the All-Star game with the rest of the world, but then I saw more of them at my trip to the Barclays Center. Richard, it was my first trip to Barclays to see the Liberty in person, and it was amazing. I've been on this little WNBA arena tour this summer, and for me right now, Valkyries 1 and New York 1A. I mean, they are just right there as far as fan experience. And of course, the thing that might push the Liberty over the top, Ellie, best mascot in sport.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she's certainly something. Yeah, that's having been on a Swiss tour and seeing what they came up with for the European football over there with their mascot, which got introduced before every single game and at halftime in every single game. It was kind of a weird triangular dog thing that. Yeah, I think Ellie wins out over what I saw over there while I was following the England football team, which is where my shirt comes from. If anyone's interested, this is an England shirt, but I think yours makes a little bit more of a statement for this particular podcast.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Always 10 toes down, supporting all the women because they are the product, right? They're the reason why we tune in. They're the reason why we subscribe to the apps and everything associated with chasing and trying to watch these games and support. So yeah, they are the product, and I want them to get what they are seeking for sure. I know all of the teams at the top of the table are seeking to lock down home court advantage. And all of a sudden, with this 5-game road trip, the Phoenix Mercury have run into a couple of hurdles, last one being Indiana. What was your big takeaway from the Mercury loss at the Fever?
I think Phoenix will be concerned about how they played defense last night because they got torn to bits by an Indiana team that didn't have Clark and just constantly penetrated the paint. and Ari McDonald ripped them apart. They didn't need Aaliyah Boston to have a great game for most of that matchup. They didn't need Kelsey Mitchell barely showed up at all, and
Mhm.
Indiana still scored on them pretty much at will. Phoenix have been a good defensive team all year, but yeah, that made them look shaky because what they do a lot of the time is they play small, but because everyone's kind of the same size, they're switchy, sort of
Mm.
between Alyssa Thomas, between Sabali, between now they've got Copper back as well. They
Yep.
they sort of try to make up for it and guard other teams' bigs with anybody. Sort of Alyssa Thomas will usually be on the 4 or the 5, but generally they can switch and move about. And it didn't work last night. They just were left in there were holes. No one could stay in the right place. No one could rotate to the right place. Hopefully for them, this is a blip. Like you say, they're on a road trip, so fatigue
Mhm.
starts to kick in. But yeah, that was a disturbing game to a certain extent if you're Phoenix because they scored more than enough points. A lot of the
Oh, yeah.
talk during the game was about Indiana's defense, but Phoenix scored 101 points. That's going to
Mhm.
win you the vast majority of games in the WNBA, whatever kind of pace the game's played at.
For
And
sure.
yeah, Indiana still were in front pretty much the whole night.
A career high night for Ari McDonald. She went off for 17 points alone in the second quarter. And after a very quiet first half, just 5 points for Aaliyah Boston in the first two quarters, scoreless in the third, she exploded for 17 points of her own in that fourth and decisive quarter as they rediscovered the fact that they have a three-time All-Star who can really tear up the post there for the Fever. How concerned are you for the Fever as they try to move up the standings without Clark? At what point should fans start to hit the panic button about her return?
I mean, it's hard to know from the outside sort of how serious the injury is, but
Mhm.
they're totally right to be careful with it. I think this is probably a playoff team anyway. I think, we're talking about 8 teams from 9, maybe 10 are going to make the playoffs. You're
Yeah.
much better off letting her take the recuperation time she needs to get healthy and winning as many games as you can with what they've got because they've shown this team can go about 500 at worst without her anyway. And
Mhm.
what you should be doing is working out the best way to play without her because even when she's around, you have to play some of the minutes without her on the floor. So you work out your best options defensively. You work out your best ways to score that aren't purely focused around Clark having the ball. So this can be an advantage. We've seen teams over the years gain from when a star player gets hurt because the other players have to take on more responsibility, have to take on different roles, and then are more prepared to provide sort of offense or defense when that star player comes back. So this can be an advantage, but obviously they have to survive and keep winning some games. But they showed last night they can do that.
Absolutely. Indiana, not the only team playing shorthanded. Atlanta getting tested on the road at Dallas. No Jordan Canada out with an illness. Of course, Ryan Howard still on the bench injured, and Brittany Griner decided to get ejected in the third quarter. But none of that mattered because Naz Hillman came to play with 12 gigantic points in the fourth quarter, including what proved to be the dagger three for the win. What were your takeaways from that matchup?
Well, it's another Naz Hillman game. I think we've been seeing this more and more as the season's gone on.
Yeah.
They're still starting Jones and Griner, but they're ending generally with Jones and Hillman, or at work, or possibly Griner and Hillman. Hillman's on the floor consistently, and I think it was Kevin Pelton who tweeted a couple of nights ago that at some point, possibly into the playoffs, they might just bite the bullet and start Hillman rather than continuing to put up with this sort of facade of starting the two players that they're paying max salaries to, and instead actually just start their best lineup. Um,
Right.
I I thought it was worth mentioning that Griner's ejection wasn't nearly as bad as it got painted in a lot of circles. I don't. She
Thank you
didn't
for that.
really bump the ref,
Right.
despite what a lot of people were saying. She was yelling at her, and she kept yelling at her after the first tech. But
As
it
one
was the
does.
yeah, it was Latoya Pringle trying to pull her away. Oh, sorry, Latoya Sanders trying to pull her away from the ref that actually made contact with the official. and I
Mm,
don't think we'll see a suspension coming through for
right.
Griner because there was no real bump, there was no intentional contact there. There was just a lot of yelling. I wouldn't particularly expect the second technical to be rescinded, but I don't think there'll be anything added on top.
Right.
And yeah, from the other side, I just Dallas still aren't there. The defense is still porous and
Mm,
generally bad. And yeah, I mean, obviously it was a very tight game with Atlanta, but Atlanta missing key pieces.
right.
And Dallas are one of the teams that maybe are a seller going into that trade deadline for the next week. But it's a matter of who would you give up? Does someone come in for Hines Allen?
Mm,
Maybe Carrington even.
okay.
But yeah, it depends who they want to see as sort of parts of their future as well. Which of these players do they think are going to be around in future years, even if they're not necessarily under contract for future seasons? Who do they think will stick around?
Right. I did appreciate the fact that Arike looks rested. She took time during the All-Star break clearly to recharge her batteries because she's looking more like the Arike of old. She had a double-double before halftime. Like, I mean, she's doing Arike things.
I mean, she's a unique player in the league, and that makes sometimes it makes it complicated having to build around the type of player she is, having her on your roster because that's always going to affect how you have to play.
Yeah.
So yeah, at some point it's whether they think this is actually going to work long term with her and Beckers, or whether they try to move on from her. I did suggest before this off season whether maybe they should be trying to trade Arike and just sort of start completely fresh, turn this team over to Beckers, make it clearly her team.
Mm.
Because while Arike is still there, it's not going to switch over, even with Beckers being the All Star this year. But
Tell you
again,
what,
with the with,
so pretty. I just her game, I finally got to see her play in person when I went to the American Airlines Center a few weeks ago, and I'd never seen her play before in person, and TV does not do Paige justice. She is so silky. It reminded me so much of Elena Delle Donne and or
yeah,
Maya Moore. She doesn't have the physicality of Maya Moore, but Maya was so smooth with it, and so is Paige.
yeah, that jumper's pretty.
Yeah.
And she feels like the player who's going to take over the mantle from Williams when
Mhm.
from Courtney Williams as
Yep.
the player everyone talks about with the mid range game, loving the
Oh,
mid
for sure.
range and
Yeah.
keeping it alive. If you go back as far as some of us do, it used to be Deanna Nolan before Courtney Williams came
Yes,
in
Tweety.
that
Yep.
everyone loved for the mid range jumper. And doesn't have that same lift that Nolan and Williams have, but
Right.
the jumper goes in just the same. She doesn't need to go over anyone when you've got the handle she's got to create
Right.
space anyway. Yeah, she's an exceptional talent, and it's only the rookie season that Clark had last year that's stopping people from really going over the top about how good Becker's rookie
Mhm.
season has been because rookie guards aren't meant to be this good.
No.
We've seen this over the years. Rookie
Yeah,
guards
we saw it.
aren't supposed
Yeah.
to show up and be this good this fast.
Yeah, we
And
saw
she's had it.
Kelsey Plum struggle when she
Yeah,
came into the league, Skylar Diggins. I mean, the list goes on, but I think it's just the development that has gone on at the college level, particularly over the last 5 years, that has made these players leave college pro ready.
yeah. I mean, and she stuck around a little longer in college than she might have done, which probably helped
Mhm.
her get even more ready.
Yep.
And yeah, and it's just Dallas's record and the couple of little injuries she's had that are
Mhm.
holding her back from being considered one of the absolute top players already. And yeah, we'll see where she comes in sort of things like all WNBA voting at the end of the season because probably Dallas's record holds her back from that sort of accolade, but she'll be on some ballots. I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Yeah, I hope so because she has earned her way there for sure so far. Last but not least, we finally had the WNBA Finals rematch. Minnesota playing host to a very injury depleted New York team. What impressed you most about Minnesota's ability to dominate?
It was some in many ways it was a classic Minnesota game where they just keep doing what they do, possession after possession, and they're efficient, they're smooth, they play to their instructions and rules, and
Mhm.
eventually it's good enough to win games because they do it better than you when it all plays out over the course of an entire 40-minute game. Eventually they're going to come out ahead. Last night, I don't think New York will be too unhappy about how the game went because
Mhm.
ultimately they managed to penetrate Minnesota's defense quite a lot and
They
they
just
made
couldn't
it into
finish
the
at the
paint.
rim. There were so
Yeah,
many misses at the rim. Goodness.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Cloud went past Williams a lot, couldn't finish.
Mhm.
Fibig didn't shoot well. They didn't like we were talking about with Indiana's kind of forgetting that they could focus their defense, their offense around Boston at times. New York seemed to forget Jonquel Jones existed for about half the game.
Right.
Um, so that's an easy fix as well for any sort of future game. And obviously they're missing key pieces, primarily Stewart, but also the depth that they get from Burke and Sabally. So
Mhm.
I don't think New York will be too upset. Obviously, you don't want to lose games, but they're probably somewhat resigned at this point to being no better than the number 2 seed anyway. So they probably don't want to go 0-4 in this run of games they've got coming up against Minnesota just for the mental issue. But
Right.
generally speaking, the game didn't go too badly. They shot pretty well, and yeah, certainly offensively they did fine. They'll be a little worried about how well Minnesota produced. Obviously, no one can stop Collier, but
Right.
without Stewart in the middle, their defense takes a big hit. So it's a different lineup from what we'll hopefully see as long as Stewart's back for the playoffs. Because we heard them say just before the game that they're sort of hoping she'll be back by the end of August, and the playoffs start mid-September. So if you
Mhm.
go much beyond that, you're starting to worry about the playoffs.
Exactly. I think it was encouraging for Minnesota to have Bridget Carleton take herself off the milk carton and put herself into the box score. She has been very hit and miss this season, and just her ability to drive and hit some key shots when it's her turn to rise and fire. Because McBride's going to get her numbers, Courtney Williams, Letitia Heidemann, who the producers are going to be. But I feel like, particularly when you go back to that Commissioner's Cup loss to Indiana at home, which I consider a home game. I know they only have the one loss at home technically, but for me, it's two.
Yep.
Bridget Carleton was just a no show. So I think if I'm a Lynx fan, I'm very encouraged by BC finding her rhythm.
Yeah, the Lynx are another team who are going to be interesting over the next week to see if they go out and get somebody because there may be 7 players deep in players that Cheryl Reeve actually trusts to play,
Mm,
and none of those are wings behind the starting lineup of Carlton and McBride because Shepard and Heidemann are basically the backups that she trusts. Diamond
yep.
Miller is constantly getting a few minutes here and looking okay, and then a few minutes there, and then she plays nothing. And yeah, it feels like her chance to actually make an impact in Minnesota is probably over. So
Mm,
maybe you cash in the next week if somebody still thinks that there's something worth trading for there, and they get someone who's more likely to actually give them an option, especially if someone got hurt. I
right.
mean, Alana Smith is constantly in the wars, so that would be a reason to get another big in. But yeah, another wing. When I was watching a couple of nights ago Chicago play.
Yeah.
Rebecca Allen seems like exactly the sort of player who would get minutes as a backup wing, as basically the replacement for Carly Samuelson. But the
Mhm.
numbers there would be difficult to fit. So maybe you want someone like that, but not necessarily Allen specifically.
Gotcha. Um, as you look at the Los Angeles Sparks, 5 wins in 6 games, they are climbing the leaderboard. Of course, they have a big hole to dig out of to try to playoff push, but they've got Cameron Brink back. What intrigues you about this Sparks team?
They're really good offensively, and
Mhm.
the intriguing thing is how good they might be if they can ever fix their defense. Because yeah, right now they're good for both teams
Right.
offensively because they help everyone score. Um, Maybe Brink helps that. I mean, we she looked sort of pretty mobile, pretty good coming back. She didn't take any shots outside of just shooting from outside, but she looked healthy enough as a return. But yeah, I'm not convinced LA are gonna really make meaningful push. They could
Okay.
get in the mix for the playoffs because obviously we're talking 8 teams out of 13, which means you don't necessarily need a great record to get in the playoffs. It's going to be a sort of a between teams like Washington, Golden State, and LA for those sort of final spots around 500, maybe a little below it even. But
Right.
I mean, that front court is a lot of fun. That Hamby, Stevens, Jackson front court. They can score. They
And
can
they're
run.
massive. Those are
Yeah,
very
there's so much
tall
length.
human
Yeah.
beings.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fun team. Julie Alamon's a fun point guard. Kelsey Plum can put up points in a hurry. That you're going to
Mhm.
enjoy watching their games. You're just not necessarily going to see them win that many if you're a fan. But obviously, the good run lately, getting them back involved at least in the playoff picture. And yeah, I think they're better than Dallas. They're in amongst that mix for the 8th seed if they can keep this going. But I'm not sure they're much better than that. So again, do you think about selling in the next week without wanting to sound like a broken record? Do you
Right.
trade someone like Stevens if you get a good enough offer?
Azare is having an amazing career best season. She has been so fun to watch. And when you are 6'6" and can shoot the three with consistency like she has been doing this season, what a weapon. And it makes me think of what Minnesota may be lacking when all is said and done, and that's size, right? If you're relying on Smith as your five, she's undersized. So I worry about that potential matchup that would be a redo of last year's WNBA finals against New York. The lineup, especially with Miesman on the way, that New York is going to be able to throw at teams is just gigantic. And I wonder if Minnesota looks to just add a big body.
Yeah, I mean the issue there is that it needs to be someone who's big and who Cheryl Reeve would actually be willing to play.
Yeah.
So there's no point picking someone up who'd be the 10th 11 player just because they're 6'7" or whatever. It has to be someone who's actually good enough to crack Reeves' rotation. So yeah, it would need to be someone like Stevens or that kind of caliber because otherwise there's not a lot of point. And
Mm.
the problem there is that even for the end of a season, the price might be high, and the salary could be quite high as well, which then some can could make it hard to fit in and make the numbers work for a trade as well.
The two mystery teams for me currently vying for playoff spots are Seattle and Las Vegas because I'm never quite sure which version of those teams will show up night in and night out. As you look at Las Vegas, let's start there because they have a couple of championships in the last several years. Um, what 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 jumps out at you as far as what you're missing as a fan consistently from them?
Lots, unfortunately. um, they've not been good all season, and I've not seen an enormous amount of signs of it changing. To be honest, I mean they've put Lloyd to the bench the last couple of games and tried to see if that's worked. I mean they've gotten a couple of wins, but I still find them very unconvincing. They're going to win games occasionally when Asia Wilson and usually Jackie Young carry them to that win,
Right.
but the team defense isn't good enough anymore. The team offense isn't good enough to make up for that defense. And yeah, I think they might make the playoffs. We might get there and sort of people will pick them as the surprise winner in the first round, and then they're probably going to lose in 2 games to New York or Minnesota
Mhm.
because this has not been a good team this year. They just feel like there's just been such a significant drop off from the team that they used to be 2 3 years ago when and it's not just because Kelsey Plum's gone and Lloyd's replaced her, but there has been attrition with the roster, and there has also just been that they've lost that edge. Pat Riley used to call it the disease of
Swagger.
more. Yeah,
Yeah.
once you've won, there's not that same level of desire and belief, and it doesn't feel like it's there. They don't play with that same level of hunger, and there's not the defense especially feels just like the team unit isn't there, and Becky Hammond hasn't been able to fix it, unfortunately. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's changing to me. I don't think the Nelissa Smith trade fixed anything really. and I don't think they're going to bounce any higher than they currently are.
Hmm. I do like Melissa Smith on that roster. She seems to be playing much better personally, and looks like the Athletes Unlimited athlete that we've seen dominate in that league in the WNBA offseason. So I'm happy for Liz that she's in the lab with Asia Wilson and picking up every trick and nuance that she can add to her bag. So I'm excited for her career wise. But to your point, Richard, I don't know that that changes very much for Vegas. What about Seattle? I look at the length, I look at the youth, Malonga, the draft pick, Gabby Williams. I just get so excited. Gabby's still leading the WNBA in steals, but night in and night out, despite the elite leadership of Skylar Diggins and Neko Gumake, Seattle just doesn't seem to be able to consistently put it together. Do you have an answer as to perhaps why?
I don't. I imagine I'd be employed by the Storm at this point if I did. This they're a as you say, when they click, this is a team that can definitely beat anybody. I'd be
Yes.
more scared of them than I would be of Vegas in a playoff
Right?
series right now.
Yes.
Their depth still concerns me. I don't see a lot beyond their top five, and hoping that Malonga has a big game on a given night.
Mhm.
Um, they do have contracts they could move if they're willing to give up Clark, and obviously they still have the Kayla Lou Samuelson contract at the bottom of the roster as well that they could use in a deal. Whether they're willing to do it, because they could have made any trade like that a while back now. They could have made it in preseason even. So I'm not convinced anything that is going to happen there in the next week. So yeah, they're scary on any given night. I'm not sure they're going to beat a good team in a best of five or best of seven in theory, if they theoretically made the finals. They feel like a team that's going to show up in a playoff series, put up a good showing, and then exit. To me, still, even though we've got a while to go yet, but yeah.
Right. Interesting. I love the two teams that are trying to hang on to playoff spots or be in the conversation, and that is expansion Golden State and full of the young kids on the block, Washington, the youngest team in the WNBA. I find the Mystics incredibly entertaining night in and night out. Do you think either of those teams, and especially Golden State now without Kayla Thornton, can really solidify themselves as a postseason team?
I think they're definitely capable of making the playoffs. What you
Okay.
do when you get there's a different question. And yeah, I mean, Golden State have shown all season pretty much that they can keep producing results regardless of who it is that's actually still left to play on the roster. So I'm not
Mhm.
sure, much as Thornton was a very valuable player for them, I'm not sure they're going to get much worse without her, because they've been coping all season with players leaving for Eurobasket, lots of
Mhm.
rotation turnover, and they've managed to keep going. One of the most impressive things they've done all season as an expansion team is there's been no slide. Lots of expansion teams sort of have that purple patch where they look good for a couple of games, but then they'll
Mhm.
lose 8 in a row, or then they'll
Right.
lose 10 out of 12. And they've I think the most they've lost all season was 4 in a row, and that was when they had to play New York, Minnesota, and Phoenix in consecutive games. So,
Yeah.
yeah, this has been an incredibly impressive team, and yeah, and obviously with their home court advantage, they're especially enjoyable to watch as well, because that crowd is so excited to have a team, gets into it so much, and yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Valhalla
Washington,
is for real. Richard, I encourage you to get to Chase Center. I was
it's
there
a long
for
way for me to go,
I
unfortunately, but
know, but
yeah.
I'm telling you, it'll be worth the use of your frequent flyer miles. Chase Center is unbelievably entertaining, and the fact that Golden State is not only competing to get to the postseason. I mean, this is not your run-of-the-mill expansion team. And talk about setting the bar high for Toronto and Portland, who are next to come on board next season. The Golden State Valkyries vibe with Valhalla and the violet and the logos and that beautiful herringbone parquet floor. It was such an experience to be there in person. And the fact that they are leading the league in attendance. 18,000 strong. It's the first venue I've seen since Larkonomics hit the WNBA where the season ticket holders at Golden State did not sell their tickets to any Fever fans. It was a dominant Golden State full throat crowd for the first time because Indiana is they'll put it on a t-shirt. We have home court everywhere. But they didn't at Golden State, and that was so impressive. So shout out to everybody in the Bay Area, Oakland, wherever, East Bay, everybody that has come out to support because it has mattered and it resonates. And for every fan that tunes in, it jumps through the screen.
Yeah, with the prices I've seen some people getting for those Indiana road games, that's a genuine
Yeah.
that's a step to make, not selling those tickets when Indiana
Yeah.
come to town. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's something to be proud of that you're
Mhm.
willing to keep hold of those.
Yep.
Um, to move
And
on to Washington,
yes, I was gonna say, let me just say Keytron, that was so cute when they combined Kiki and Citron for Keytron on the socials. I love that.
well, I mean, again, that's been the bright spot of their season is how well the rookies have worked out. This is such a young team, and I don't think they were expecting to be this good. I
Mm,
mean, which raises the question again whether what they do in the next week has been changed by how good they've turned out to be. Because
mm,
I remember saying in the first sort of couple of weeks of the season that the ideal season from their perspective with Brittany Sykes was to have her teach the kids for 2/3 of the season, be
yeah,
their guide along that way, and then get a first round pick for her just before the deadline. So the question is whether they still think that, or whether this team thinks they gain more from keeping this whole unit together, getting into the playoffs, and then everyone gets even if it is a first round exit and they go out quickly in a couple of games to someone like New York or Minnesota, that's an experience.
yeah,
That's a level of progression that players need. You rarely see teams win in the playoffs until they've had a year or two of learning how to lose in the playoffs. You usually make it first and then have to learn how to play there. So they might think it's worth keeping this whole group together now because Sykes is probably the only major piece, certainly the only veteran, because it would be hard to trade Dolson because of the size of her contract, and
mhm,
someone might give them a second round for Enksler, who's now on the sort of the end of their rotation,
right.
or Aaliyah Edwards. We still don't know quite what's going on there. They're saying she's injured. I wonder whether that's a sort of day to day until the deadline because we don't want her getting more hurt in any
Right.
given game. So we're just wrapping her in cotton wool in case someone wants to give us something for her, kind of move.
Yeah, that's very curious because one thing that Washington has a lot of, stretch 4s and 5s. Just
Yeah,
everybody
there's
can
depth
play
there.
that
Yeah,
position, right? Like, it's crazy, and I also have really enjoyed seeing Shakira Austin healthy for the majority
yeah,
of the season.
absolutely. I think we all have. Yeah,
Right? She is a delight and she plays with such ferocity and want to. It's really been a treat. And I think her passion is infectious. And I think it's impacted and elevated the superstar rookies. And then I just look forward to Georgia Amore coming back from the ACL. I mean, that team on paper is nice.
yeah. I mean, and again, and so young. So this sort of core
Mhm.
can get to grow together. They've already got three firsts, I think, over the
Yeah.
next two seasons because they've got Minnesota's as well. So yeah, this is going to be a fun team to watch. And obviously, with everyone being free agents, we'll see who they manage to add next season. There could be some sort of some veterans on the free agent market who think, well, all of these kids are pretty good, so I'm going to look good, and we might win some games if I go and join this group. So yeah, we'll see what they manage to put together afterwards.
Yep. I know Connecticut has been at the bottom of the standings for the majority of the season, but every now and again, the Sun remind everybody that they can get anybody. Tina Charles, second leading scorer all time, can dig deep into her bag and remind everybody that she's got the little jump hook and so many moves on the post and can shoot the three. When it's all said and done, I know Connecticut is not going to make the playoffs, but Richard,
Nope.
they're going to determine who does the rest of the way.
This is yeah. I mean, they're going to be sellers again,
Yep.
and I don't know whether there's going to be any takers for most of their core over the next week. Um, I think the most interesting part about their team is sort of watching what they can get from Rivers and from Morrow and Lacan and Sheldon. It's like, yeah, I mean, Charles and Mabry are going to take a lot of shots, but their future belongs to the kids, and that's who they need to see producing, who they need to sort of find out how good these players are, what sort of position and what sort of role they should be in. Because Morrow is still very small for a four in this league, so she has to play to a certain style, or maybe become a three later on in her career rather than the four that she is.
Ooh, I like
But
that.
she's going to need to develop more of a perimeter game to make that kind of
Yeah, yeah,
move.
she's gotta hit shots.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of her value comes in how much she battles under the rim, how many rebounds she gets that she shouldn't really be getting if
Mhm.
she, if everything was a 50-50 choice. But there's talent there. They've got young talent, but yes, this is a bad team, and yeah, it's a team where they might set some records about how bad they are. Unfortunately, they're going to come close. They keep coming up in conversations with the '98 Mystics, which is not a team that you ever want to be brought up in comparisons with. Unfortunately,
Yeah, 100%. How do you think the turmoil around the team, on the market, going to move, all of the machinations off the court is impacting the on-court product?
I mean, you would hope the players don't pay much attention to that sort of stuff, but it can't help.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, I would imagine the sort of stuff that led to players like Alyssa Thomas complaining last year, which you have to imagine are still in place. They're practicing the same place they were when Thomas was complaining about being turfed out for a kid's birthday party during the playoffs. So all the same stuff is still there, and until that kind of thing gets fixed, they're probably not going to be much of an attraction for free agents as well,
Mhm.
which is another reason your picks have to work out. You have to do well with these youngsters. You have to make the right choices, because that's how you're going to build the team when you can't bring people in free agency, when you're not going to be able to attract people. We saw the same thing with Indiana for several years when Catchings was gone. They couldn't sign anybody, so they kept overpaying the wrong people because they were the only ones willing to come.
Yeah.
And yeah, then eventually it turned around when they managed to get Clark, they managed to get Boston. You had to be bad for a long time before you get that kind of help.
Yeah, I still feel like Indiana owes Kelsey Mitchell a pair of all-star nods because she was the only thing keeping that team competitive night in and night out. She was at the top of everybody's scout, and she still got her numbers.
Yeah, she did a lot of work, and yeah, it came with a lot of losing, unfortunately for her. Yeah, but there was still a lot of production, which is impressive when you're doing a lot of it on your own and you're getting double teamed every night.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so I know the playoffs don't start until mid-September, but if they started today, who do you think the top 4 teams will be? I know who they are right now, but when it's all dusted off, who do you think the top 4 teams in the WNBA with home court will be when the playoffs start?
Well, I have to admit, I was looking at sort of the net rating order earlier on today, which is noticeably different from just the basic standings. I mean,
Right?
Minnesota are one and New York are two. This is pretty clear, whichever
Mhm.
numbers you want to look at. But
Yep.
after that, sort of the next four are kind of just a mess between Atlanta, Indiana, Seattle, and Phoenix. That's You can basically throw those four up in the air and land anywhere. I think maybe I like Phoenix and Atlanta to
Okay.
come third and fourth there, but I think anyone on that group could beat anyone else, and if that does end up 3, 4, 5, 6 for the playoffs, then I any of them could beat any of the others. That's
Yeah.
that's a toss up.
This Phoenix Atlanta, their next game is so intriguing to me. They've met one time before this season, and Atlanta won. They've got 2 more meetings, and it could be to determine who has the edge for 3rd place or 4th place, because Atlanta is 1 win away from tying Phoenix in the win column. So those are matchups that I'm keeping an eye on the rest of the way for sure. Because I think,
And obviously,
unlike any other season, home court is going to mean so much because of the increased attendance across the league. And fans are turning out in droves and they are making a difference. I've been in the stands and I've heard the push and the feel and the vibe. The Liberty fans helped New York get across the finish line against Phoenix. I was right there. Was happy to be sitting next to Richard Cohen, our guru leader extraordinaire. And I mean, I was not you, Richard. I wasn't in London. I was with Aaron. Aaron was there, and
I know you meant.
your name on the screen, and I'm like, okay. But Aaron was there, and we had so much fun, and we were marveling at how engaged the Liberty fans were participation wise. Like at halftime, they handed out those thunder sticks to make sure that the opposing team had to shoot into the flurry of the seafoam green things making noise. And it was just, and I thought, I've never seen that. That's so brilliant. Because, we walk past them at halftime and I see all these little things. And of course, I'm thinking, well, what am I not getting at my seat over here? And it was the Thunder Sticks because they were just trying to maximize that home court advantage. And I think that's why vying for those top 4 spots is going to be so huge.
Yeah, Jonathan Kolb knows what he's doing in New York.
Yes.
That's yeah. He's been at this quite a while now, and yeah, he gets the little stuff right as well as the big stuff. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I agree with you that the home court could be important. I mean, in for several teams, getting healthy, I think, will be considered sort of more important. That's like they'll
Hmm.
trust themselves to win a game on the road over bringing someone back earlier than they want to bring them back, because obviously Atlanta are worrying about getting Ryan Howard healthy. New York have
Right.
issues with Stewart. Minnesota might have to sort of manage someone like Alana Smith through sort of play her 25 minutes instead of 32 on an average. Indiana have got to try and get Clark back and then get her into the mix. Kalia Copper still doesn't look totally back to her old self in
Mhm.
Phoenix. So I
I'm
don't
worried
think
about
that.
Satu Sabali. Her numbers have
Yeah, she's been
really
off lately.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. That ankle, I think, is still a problem. She was at one point in a wheelchair at a Diamondbacks game locally, and then has been in a boot. She comes to the post game pressers all iced up. It's I think that ankle is more problematic than even she would like to admit, and they are clearly managing it. But she's not putting up the numbers that Phoenix needs her to put up to have success.
I mean, I feel like in that case, they really ought to be just giving her some time off, because this
Yeah,
Phoenix team has shown they can win games, whoever the hell they're putting out on the floor. They've been doing that
yeah,
all season. They
yeah.
won games with basically Alyssa Thomas and a load of people most fans had never heard of before the start of this season. So yeah,
True.
go back to that. Give Sabali 3 weeks off to go Lana Beach if that's what it needs to get her foot right. If that's going
Yeah.
to help, then do it.
Absolutely, because they need her to be the unicorn that she is, 6'4", stretch the floor,
Yeah.
unguardable, can shoot the three, all of the things. Looking ahead, who is your MVP right now?
I think it's the same as everybody else's. I think Collier is a long way ahead of the field right now, and unless she gets
Ooh,
hurt, I don't think she's losing it.
okay. Well, I beg to disagree. And perhaps maybe because I'm in close proximity to PHX Arena. Alyssa
I'm
Thomas is averaging nearly a triple double. She is just an eyelash shy in the assist department. And she truly is living up to her moniker, the engine. Teams that have had success against Phoenix have found a way to limit her ability to distribute the basketball. And that happened in the loss against Indiana. When she doesn't hit double figure assists, her ability to distribute the basketball is her most lethal weapon. And so when teams can limit that, they have found a little bit of success. They let her score because they find that she's going to score the 2, but she's not kicking to the 3. And that's a win. So that was the strategy that Stephanie White employed against her. And I think if you're game planning against a person with so many capabilities to impact how everybody performs on the floor, that is the definition of most valuable player. You take AT off of that roster, and Phoenix looks completely different.
I, I mean, I don't disagree with anything you just said. Alyssa, I'm a huge Alyssa Thomas fan. Um, she was my pick for MVP a couple of years ago when I think she should have won it.
Okay,
They don't give me an official ballot, unfortunately, or she would have been on my official one.
gotcha.
Um, I but I think Collier is the best player on the best team, obviously, right now. Um, she's the she's one of the best defensive players in the league, as is AT, but Collier
Mhm,
meets that kind of qualification as well. And I think for the voters, there'll be a feeling that it's her turn, which obviously you don't want. You don't want to be the reason someone gets the vote, but that always helps with the narrative for sort of creating the storyline that leads to someone getting the votes for these awards. I
right.
Yeah, I I can absolutely see the argument for Thomas with the season that she's put up in Phoenix, with the way she's been helping them continue to win whoever it was is that they managed to put on the floor next to her. But I
Mhm.
think Collier is still, as long as she stays healthy until the end of the season, I think she's the strong favorite. And yeah, I wouldn't be betting anywhere else if I had to put money on it.
I could see that. I would like whoever is outfitting Nafisa with her shoulder gear to contact Phoenix and let AT develop the same protocol because the tape is not taping. They tape up her shoulder. And I saw firsthand in that Liberty game where it was just coming off and people were getting their fingers caught in it and it was just a hot mess. So hopefully they can help her keep that shoulder together in a more efficient way, a la Collier. For me, that is a separator. I hear what you're saying, but I too could make the argument that AT is due. She was robbed a couple of years ago,
Yep,
and
like I said,
it's
yep,
hard to get MVP when you're not leading the league in scoring, right? You know, but
yeah.
I looked at Jewel Lloyd led the league in scoring just a few years ago. She didn't win MVP because Seattle wasn't that good. So I don't think just leading the league in scoring like Fee is doing is enough. To your
No,
point,
I
I
mean,
appreciate
that
her ability to play defense, but she defends in the post, and I would argue AT defends 1 through 5. So, I'll just
team record is also going to be a tiebreaker for a lot of people at the minute with
okay.
how good Minnesota are compared to sort of Phoenix with their record a little further back and maybe dropping off a little more than Minnesota has. So yeah, that'll come into it for some voters as well. I mean, that's part of why Asia Wilson at the moment won't be in the conversation, regardless of how good her individual numbers are, because the
Yeah.
team's 500 and people won't put her on the same level as Fee and At.
Yeah. Well, and Asia has done herself a little bit of disservice by putting up numbers that can be compared to just a year ago. She scored
Yeah,
more than 1,000 points. She set a WNBA single season record. Like she has set the bar so freaking high that you could just look at her own metrics and go, well, she's not playing as good as she did last year or the year before. So that's, when you've been a 3-time MVP, those are the metrics you're dealing with.
yeah.
100%. What excites you for the rest of the way?
I mean, to be honest, I would like us to be playing fewer games. I would like the playoffs to start sooner. I'm done. I want to go
Yes.
get. I want to get to the games that matter.
Yes,
Um,
Richard.
we
I'm
should
so
not be playing 44. But
yes. I liked 40 last year. I thought that was a nice number and it accommodated the Olympic break very well. And I want to see the players that are, the ticket selling players at the top of the rosters to be available to play. I think all of these games has created extra duress and has limited the stars' ability to shine, and that just hurts the product, and I don't want to see that. I want to see players healthy and available, and I know injuries happen, it's part of the deal, but I think the grind of these back-to-backs and 4 games in 7 days that we keep seeing with team after team after team is just a lot, and I would like to see the quality not impacted as greatly as it feels like it has been this season with the injury bug biting, and it's hit everybody across the league. So fewer games. Let's get to the playoffs faster. I am with you, Richard. I make you commissioner for a day. Please make that happen.
Yeah, uh, my Twitter DMs are open if the league wants to contact me for the next position. But yeah, I won't hold my breath on that one. Yeah, I think that'll come up in CBA negotiations as well.
Mhm.
Exactly how many games they expect to play, on how
Yes,
big of a sort of footprint for the season, because it's hard to extend if players still want to play overseas, and
right.
until you're paying them a lot more. Obviously, we're hoping they're going to get paid significantly more, but a lot of
Yes.
them are still going to want to go overseas anyway. So until this is their only gig,
Mhm.
then you have to worry about how big the footprint for the season can be, and that limits how many games you can play. But the league are going to want to sell as many games as they can, so it all becomes a negotiation one side or the other for how much you extend, and sort of try and build in a bigger. Well, the league likes to use the word as well, the footprint for the league, because you want to cover the time, but you also want your players healthy. That's the product.
Absolutely. You are across the pond in one of my favorite cities, London. How challenging is it to be a fan of the WNBA so many time zones away?
If you've got a proper job, I imagine it's very difficult. I'm very fortunate in being able to stay up into the middle of the night to watch games.
Mhm.
Um, for people who can't do that, it has to be very hard, because you either have to get very little sleep or you have to watch everything on delay. And I think we all know that watching sports live is part of what we love about watching sports. It's seeing these games as a group activity, where sort of other people are watching them at the same time. It's seeing them where the result is unknown, because a lot of the time, if you watch it on delay, you're not going to be able to avoid knowing the result before you actually see the game.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's hard, but yeah, that if you love the game, I guess it's possible. But yeah, it's going to be difficult from somewhere where all the games are on in the middle of the night.
Got you. So, what is your sleep schedule like?
Closer to a normal American than a normal Brit, generally speaking.
Okay, I got you. I got you. Yeah, when I was last in London, I checked out the Lions because Meg Gustafson was on the team, and that was
Yeah.
really cool to pull through. And the basketball just seems to continue to elevate in your neck of the woods, and that's really exciting to see.
Well, unfortunately, the Lions kind of dissolved after that season, but on the women's side at
Oh,
least, they're yeah, the
oh,
London Lions women's team basically is a bunch of youth players now. They don't win in the British League because the investment went away. They're still putting some money into the men's side, but not the women's at the moment. We're
oh, that's
Yeah,
a
the
bummer.
women's league over here is kind of poor. The British game doesn't have the money in it on the women's side, in particular. It doesn't have a lot of money in it on the men's side. But
Okay.
yeah, if you want the stronger European leagues, you're more looking at places like Turkey, places like Spain, France, and the Euro League sort of picks and chooses on sort of one or two teams from each country, which then ends up being the strongest competition. But yeah, we don't have a lot in Britain, unfortunately. There's a lot of interest in basketball, but a lot of it
Yeah.
focuses on leagues like the NBA rather than on the action that we actually can go to.
Interesting. Well, thanks so much for that insight. I'm so bummed about the Lions. I had such a blast pulling up and watching.
So did I. I was there when they won the Euro Cup. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a hell of a ride, but yeah, it came to an end right at the end of that, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I think we hit just about everything to chat about, unless there's something else you would like to discuss.
I think that's about it. I'll probably be talking about the trade options over the next week. I might write something. We might have a
Okay.
podcast coming up if I can talk other people into debating trades out with me. But yeah,
Well,
nothing in
here's the
stone
deal.
yet.
I shy away from that because it involves math, right? The math has to work. And I study journalism for a reason because I don't want to do math. But yeah, it does get a little sticky just because of the hard cap that we talked about. But I just don't see teams needing that much to make a sacrificial move. I can't see a team doing something chemistry wise when things have kind of been working to this point. So I'm very curious. And so we're on the clock because it's a week away. And I also want to shout out the fact that Diana Taurasi's documentary on Amazon Prime is also a week away. And I cannot wait to watch it.
Okay. Well, I think we've hit everything. So thanks for listening. You can see on the screen we have my Blue Sky account, or if you're listening to this, it's Richard Cohen. Very
Okay.
easy. Cindy is at Cindy Brunson AZ.
Yep.
And if you want to hear more from our various team, we're back every day on the Her Hoop Stats podcast. Thanks for listening.